So we begin by setting our motivation once again to do whatever we possibly can to attain the peerless state of enlightenment, with the knowledge that to attain such a state I need to perfect all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. To perfect those trainings in turn I need to have a thorough understanding of what they are, and to gain that understanding in a reliable way based on a non-mistaken presentation. And thus it is that I am here this morning to listen to a brief explanation on the outlines of the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, as composed by the great Lama Tsongkhapa.
Sanje Sudam Soki Chonam La Janju Bardo Dagni Jaksuchi Dagi Chunin Ki Pechok Namki Drola Banja Sanje Drupasho Sanje Sudam Soki Chonam La Janju Bardo Dagni Jaksuchi Dagi Chunin Ki Pechok Namki Drola Banja Sanje Drupasho Sanje Sudam Soki Chonam La Janju Bardo Dagni Jaksuchi Dagi Chunin Ki Pechok Namki Drola Banja Sanje Drupasho Tayata Gade Gade Paragade Parasangade Bodhi Swaha Tayata Gate Gate Parakate Parasangate Bodhi Swaha Tayata Gate Gate Parakate Parasangate Bodhi Swaha.
Sokchang Gyatang Ngapchung Gachike, so the Sandengi Pachin.
Something who they come back to the top, something can to the Sachita Data to that was something moving. Nobody said to me when I was sent Chipacha. That you come back to the time and something come back, paying the mark on the Mimi Samatan and something come back to a cage. That's Subar Ravian and Mobile Chena Chicken the chicken at the nature. Chile connection at Setila Lucente one never some data, and you know over to some data. Same jacket to enjoy something knows. That about Setila Lucente one never something. Lucem shit which they were simply something knows. You were you don't know about the son of Mushida. Mushi number Mushi's number 7, Sinoso to be something knows.
And so we have been covering the perfections, the 6 perfections, and in the last few weeks looking at the 5th of those, the perfection of meditative stabilization. And this was looked at, or is being looked at in terms of the outlines, 5 main outlines that is the nature of meditative stabilization, how to enter into the practice of meditative stabilization, the divisions within meditative stabilization, how to practice meditative stabilization, and a summary following that. And with regard to the first, looking at the nature of meditative stabilization, it's really defined as a single-pointed virtuous mind which is non-distracted and focused on its object. The second, that is the how to enter into the practice. It is through looking at the benefits on the one hand of meditative stabilization and the disadvantages of not having meditative stabilization. That sort of like encourages us to initiate the practice of meditative stabilization. The third main outline is looking at the divisions of meditative stabilization, and these are done in terms of the nature of meditative stabilization and the function of meditative stabilization. Firstly, in terms of the nature of meditative stabilization. It is kind of the nature of mundane and supramundane, both categories. And the second, in terms of its functions, it has three separate functions. That is, first of all, to produce the physical and mental bliss in this life. Secondly, that's meditative stabilization, which performs a function of generating actual qualities. And thirdly, a meditative stabilization focused on working for the benefit of sentient beings. And so they are further looked at with more brief, more extensive definitions. And so the first of these, again, the function in relation to physical and mental bliss, that's described as having the meditative stabilization that generates a mental and physical pliancy from which then arises that bliss. And the second of them, the meditative stabilization, which functions to produce qualities. These qualities, in this context, are referred to as super knowledges like clairvoyance, liberations, totalities, and masteries.
Lam Koma gave Shida Castle, Reta Kaja, Lango Topatizo, Putaboji Kevala, Tembush Keku, Tembu Kevala, Tengatsi, Shidan Keku. Tengatsi Mevala, Tibi, Neka, Yundera Chene, Jurgo Matin Latu. Tengatsi Shidemeva is a chet with your man. But I think that's the Shuji, like Getchimuchata, because the Tabata Tabji was that thought of possibly get Chawachati.
And so we learned also how essential the quality, the attribute of meditative stabilization is at all stages of the path and whatever aspirations that one has for the path. So not only in assisting life within what we are in, the desire realm, but also in order to lay down the causes to attain the higher realms of form and formless realms. It is said that meditative stabilizations are absolutely quintessential, and that indeed to make any progress on paths and grounds, one cannot do so without cultivating meditative stabilization, because when we talk about what makes for progress on the path is often spoken of in terms of gaining realizations. And so in order to be able to actually gain these realizations, one needs great stability of mind to be able to stay on the object of focus. And so it is this meditative stabilization that produces that secure stability of mind, and that was able to generate certain realizations, but also to be able to maintain those realizations, because we often find we have sort of epiphanies, but they are lost and they do not remain. And so indeed, for any stage on the path, the development of our own inner meditative stabilization is considered to be paramount importance.
Chulu Pentuki, and Chida Chulu Kangal Yunde Yorda, Inayata, Yunde, and Chachelu, Ding Sablu. The Mabuchi Tengating and Neta Yabuchi Shibaina, and Tengating Yunde and the pay to get Yabuchi Shibaina, and go you want to Mabuchi on Tikua. You want to take it water,
Indeed, the facet of meditative stabilization is the more we have an appreciation of it and experience of it, the profundity the vastness of it. To that extent, it opens the door, so to speak, to be able to appreciate the qualities that are spoken of even in other spiritual traditions, and to be able to have an appreciation of and an understanding of the benefits that meditative stabilization brings, allows us to have an appreciation of the qualities that are generated in all spiritual endeavors. The third function of meditative stabilization, under the heading of the divisions of meditative stabilization, referred to the meditative stabilization working for the benefit of sentient beings, and this is described again as working for the benefit of sentient beings under 11 different categories. But again referring to the fact that, like, from the point of view of the bodhisattva, actions imbued with the bodhisattva ideal, the bodhicitta, that actually, when we say 11, it means, countless ways of benefiting sentient beings. It's limitless, the ways in which one can benefit sentient beings. And so, just musing on the countless ways in which one can use meditative stabilization, obviously imbued with the bodhicitta mind, to benefit sentient beings. Of course, really it's in any which way that is of benefit, whether it's like directly using physical means to benefit sentient beings, or protecting sentient beings from fears, from anxiety, giving good advice for people, providing them with a place to live or stay if they don't have, making sure that beings are in harmony, remaining in harmony, those who are conflicted, to bring about harmony again for them, to benefit them in those ways. to those who have who are on the correct path, to support them on the correct path. Those who are on an incorrect path, who are causing difficulty, to try and direct them towards a more harmonious way of living. And indeed, like in using every kind of effort at our disposal to be able to bring a benefit to others, bearing in mind that having a kind heart alone is not the best way to proceed. One must combine that kindness and that kind-heartedness and that willingness to help with wisdom, with whatever wisdom we can bring to it, because it's not enough just to be able to do something that is likable for the other person. That does not necessarily mean that it is beneficial for them. And so one must be able to distinguish that between what they really want and what's really beneficial for them. That something done, can be, very happy, make them very happy now, but be quite damaging for their future. And so that can't be kind of counted into the category of that which is beneficial. And so it's good to be able to perform acts that are beneficial now and will be beneficial for their future as well. That benefit will carry on. And so this is what we need, and therefore we need both that kind-heartedness and wisdom to be able to do that.
내가블라 내고도네 풀어 핑거도나 풀어 핑거도 죽고요. 다 내가다 아니 장을 못잖아. 푸다 지금 내가블라 지금서 핑거 여바이네 풀어 내고도나 뒷마도 같이. 나도 내가다 풀니가라 핑거도나 뭐다도 죽고야 들어와. 뭐 죽고야 다 내가블라 팀비 핑거도나 다 풀어 내고도나 뒷마도 같이. 다 내가블라 누구 여바이네 풀을 팽고도나 죽고야지. 뭐다들 대안에 탑케보다 뒤주 다 건가 개치부 차대거든. 다까지 내당 건가 10배 톤에 아니 페버 두배 중고도. 내당 마시면 페버 두고는 너버 두고는 마시. 다 셰마도 벌써 좋아. 그래서 이 10배 톤에 양을 좀 그거 내주 10배 톤에 아니 딜라 페버 두고에 탑시 컨스 찍고도.
So the brief rule of thumb is that if you want to benefit another, but that if it is beneficial in the short term but damaging in the long term, don't do it. If it is beneficial in the short term and beneficial in the long term, do it. If it is potentially tough or damaging in the short term but beneficial in the long term, do it. One must employ every ounce of skillful means at one's disposal, and knowing like the timing is important, knowing the actual situation, and being able to foresee perhaps what the long-term effect will be as well. So one has to have a great deal of knowledge and be able to proceed in such a perfect manner.
팬마베서 내가 감마바지 개발이면 도와. 이것도 쉬고도 내가 그 가보 전화 때는 팬바 이미도 계속 와. 내가 뭐 요되고 봐.
And so it's like when we distinguish also that benefit from like, that we may do something in the short term that will be of a person's liking, but there is kind of quite a lot of doubt around whether that is going to be ultimately beneficial to them. It may be quite harmful, and we make a lot of mistakes on that. One must understand and being able to distinguish what is actually beneficial for them and what is just simply that which will please them. And it's pointing out here too that with meditative stabilization, that one will have a sharper intelligence and be able to use one's intelligence more efficiently. So the sorry. And so in the actual mechanics of developing a meditative stabilization, of course, it's discussed in terms of going through the avoiding or overcoming 5 particular faults and then applying 8 adjustments or antidotes to those faults. We had partially discussed that. And so the 5 faults are laziness, secondly forgetting the instruction, thirdly dullness and agitation taken together, fourthly the non-application of the antidotes, and fifthly the over-application of antidotes. And we looked at the first of these as the laziness has been a major issue in the development of meditative stabilization, and therefore of the 8 adjustments, the first 4 are used to counteract laziness. They are faith, yearning, perseverance, and seeing the result of our meditative concentration in the form of meditative suppleness. And that we can see how these 4 adjustments do counteract laziness as well. And the first is that the kind of faith that we discussed last time as well, being the faith of what's called clear faith, or the faith of conviction and manifest faith, which is really informing ourselves to the point where we move beyond merely kind of blind faith. It's certainly not blind faith. It's something that is really informed by seeing the actuality of a situation and saying, okay, I have confidence that this course of action will lead to this desirable result. And that sort of feeds into the second of the adjustments, which is the yearning. Then one starts to build up this real yearning to develop meditative stabilization, and one has sort of like the fuel of faith to kind of bring that yearning to the point where we also then can apply the effort. And within that too is informed effort, because we kind of go, of course effort is necessary to do anything, necessary to develop meditative stabilization, but is it an endless effort that I have to put in? And no, because actually when it gets to the point of mental and physical suppleness, which is the 4th of the adjustments, one does not have to apply such intensive effort. One has developed to that point where one can enjoy the bliss of mental and physical suppleness. So it's kind of putting all these into that context and say one should lead on from the other in order to completely eradicate any disadvantage that might be there from laziness.
老在年不进来，可老中的站呢，别讲话修钱我都什么得我修差也多，但什么时候得了你把钱了？什么时候你把得了钱了？但我说什么得了，就我是讲把几个月吧里面多，得了这个再是那个人呢，来呢，恐怕他们都排在一起，可3个人有吧人张，可留然后就来跟你用个多，讲把几的修得不得用个多，我就奥林匹克的这那的前面是这个是修得不用个多，大概这个是大家是用嘛，我讲把几的用这个了吧，讲把几的用这个了，第二最忍不住了，然后老呀，吃不这个吃上long菜都可用多么多，可忍不住，但我这什么大家说的，什么当这当，就我就讲把几呢，讲把几看上是那个，说是对吧那些什么下头的，对吧那些当头的，对吧那些要做连头跟用头了吧，用头了，但我就马见没拉不着的。马见拉不着，
留个
再是了，但留个再是了，再是留个你把对去了的，是吧？
So this mental, physical pliancy is a kind of a reciprocal sort of arrangement when one attains that level of meditative stabilization. But one can see what that might look like partially for like looking at the suppleness and the flexibility of a small child, baby just born. You can see how amazingly supple they are. Compared to ourselves, compared to how the body then kind of like it gets more and more rigid.
장바 지기나 다 땡에들 미과샤 아니 땡에증게 미과샤네 아니 교연당 아니 디게디 모트베 토네다 셈때다 레나 아니 간장스나 보다 셈게 아니 제修行 你把修对对起 삼로 你把修对对这样恐怕他们从三界恐怕就开始三界人有人在如果的话limitation 是吧按간장스나 거你把拉住了或拉见的都过什么都给的用过的吧用过的吧
Sorry, yeah. So again, it's contrasting really the physical potential of the body as opposed to like the mental potential, and that at a certain time in youth, when the body is like the attributes of the physical body are perfectly aligned, that when they can gain some training of the body. And again, intensive training over a long period of time, we get the kind of results we see in gymnastics, or, when athletes kind of perform at the highest level. We can see the amazing things that can be done physically. But of course, that will deteriorate if the training isn't kept up, and indeed it inevitably deteriorates with aging. So that's the kind of limitations physically. But we can see it when we actually engage in meditative stabilization, meditative concentration techniques, and develop the quality of being able to gain that stability of mind, and that with that comes, without the physical training, a great deal of physical pliancy, and of course the mental pliancy that comes along with that, and to a much greater extent as well, and it remains. And they kind of pointing to this as being really probably an element of having the Buddha nature, a kind of potential that's latent within us because of that Buddha nature, and we can bring it to kind of manifest it through the process of developing our meditative concentration.
Long shot there in some and did to tap down, it did make well net to it, and want to bear too much and you go. Then been a loot the way you get under the to the Kalesh Jan, down the class I engine as bad says she would chen. And you wanted about Suzuma will lose it, Jamba Jen, could Kalesh Jan to go to water. That same delay, that because of the Calamania chair.
And so, of course, we're not talking about something that can arise without effort here. This requires a great deal of effort. We can see just how distracted and dissipated the mind is. So to bring the mind under control and to sustain that sense of control is going to take a great deal of effort. We can see the kind of effort and dedication and discipline necessary to produce a physical the pliancy of a gymnast, where the diet and all other factors have to be taken into consideration, and a great deal of care must be taken with what is ingested and so on. And indeed, training sessions are multiple every day to kind of bring that sort of pliancy about. And that no need to say then the kind of effort that we must be prepared to make in order to produce the physical mental pliancy as is referred to here.
다 근데 제사도 간장소도 장바주다 아니 제 때라잖아 아니 샘신장 류신장 아니 류셈미가 까셈에 받치나다 비루고 네트워크 좀 고여와 네트워크 좀 고여다 그래서 다 되게 그 연대의 시험나 되게 연대의 시험도 아니 되게지라 아니 조합해지 조합해도 아니 레로도 용투고 말와 어떻게.
And so then reading the descriptions of how through the meditative stabilization arises this mental pliancy, then that again it kind of infuses or induces a physical pliancy, and that this understanding these qualities and gaining an appreciation of these qualities leads to the enthusiasm that can dispel laziness.
아니 되네 다 지금 땡에서 공백걸라 아니 다 간제 저 교체제도 당아제서 미발 셈샤마도 같이 그러다 고 땡에증게 다 유연된다 땡에증게 검루 검다데 고조 김세 쪽에서 셈 미베갈 미겐갈 딱다 내 되고 뒷내마도 같이 네트 같이 네바데 네트 같이 네바데 젠데지 하다 미베갈 셈 다간시 네 무티니 네트에지 what 제도 가서 다 가서 당마제바도 괜찮고도 뒷 당마마제바체네 미베갈 네트 같이
And so the second of the faults is referred to as forgetting the instruction, and the antidote to that is the mindfulness, and that will actually keep one's focus on the object of our attention. And so it's really here when we lose the object, and so it's here we can't keep our mind on the object. We're trying to remain focused on it, but this overcome by distraction and by a lack of discipline of the mind. And so it's this kind of constantly bringing our mind back to the object of focus.
그러다 세미베갈 마네바이나 규림부 가제 대바이나 고땡가 좀 두고 말와 다다 지다 당마 뭐 예배나나 저 미베갈 네바체티 네바 마네죠도 당마 제바시 다 진짜 미베갈 네바 미베갈 네도바체티 또 미베갈 네도바체티 어쩌죠.
And so it refers to being unable
to 데베스 보라 다까지 미베갈 마네도 데발라도도 미베갈 네도고 요마와 아니 데베 장네 미베갈 네도바체티.
The fault is described as being unable to keep one's focus on the object, one's mind on the object. And there are many kind of instructions here referred to in forgetting the instructions, but the main one is to keep your mind on the object on which you're focused, because if you're just not doing that, then there's no way you're going to develop any meditative concentration. And so when it talks about the antidote to that being remembering the instruction, it's referring to mindfulness, and it's specifically it's referring to sustaining mindfulness on the object of focus.
다디네 가서데 미국에가는 내가 이나요. 다 진화 주네 다 셈셀마세 제대로 다 진화 주원도 야 견주 미국에서 보면은 견주가 되고 여러와 다딜라 아니 시신기 잘하지지 시신기 잘하지지.
And so then the third fault, so here though we can in some manner keep our focus on the object, now enters the faults of dullness and agitation, a kind of a sinking of the mind, and that which here this kind of very insidious faults related to the development of meditative stabilization, and the antidotes to both of those is a sense of a vigilance or alertness in relation to keeping the mind actually on the object.
다 지구에 맞중한테 야 뭐가 두자나 괜찮대요. 로다 지구에 중앙에서 뭐가 두지고요. 맞더니 최틱 받잖아. 아니 지구에 매받잖아. 뭐가 두 맞죠 받잖아. 아니 지금 다녀서 샤샤야지. 다녀 샤고 다더니 최마디 와이나 야 땡가지 내라 괜찮게 되고요. 봐.
And then the fourth fault is the non-application of the antidote, and so here it's kind of saying that that dullness may have entered into your meditation, but you do not see that, you do not notice that, you're not alert to it, and therefore you do not apply the necessary antidote. And so here the adjustment is that you make the necessary readjustment on the basis of the particular fault in your meditation, and so that to maintain that sense of equilibrium or equanimity of mind.
가리가리 내보고 다다 된도가 지에다 된데게 아니 친구에다 제외겐 다 그래서 미발라다 가 세나다 되게 유어받지는 가 투도 가 세세 저거 네트워크 지에지 다 되지를 된게서 검색을 열어봐 된게서 검색다 미유들다 가리네 용초거다 메도라서 가리네 용초데 개치슈데 사제 구타우스 거마이나 아니 개구데 아니 또 지구에 되게 지팅되지 아니 왜들이 가요 되겠지. 아니 단다 가서 내 당보네 그 세부 쉬우지. 나와 차도 말때 얘네 셈 때되게 산제 그 가라 셈 인데서 랑게 셈라 산제 구디 차로서 다 가라 셈 간토도 그 네트워크 안데 다 내자데 다 고저 내자데 유링다 링다 안데가데 또서 고저 사다 또 가서 세트 조회 중으로 와.
And so what you want is at this point trying to sustain in our particular meditative focus is a sense of clarity with regard to the object, and a kind of like a stability of the attention. And so here one is watching for any deviation from clarity and from stability, and applying antidotes when necessary, the readjustment, and avoiding applying any antidotes when it's not necessary, but maintaining that sense of equilibrium or equanimity of mind. So it's here starting out from us to choose any kind of object to focus on is allowable, but best to choose an image of the Buddha, and as we said, that should be like as small as possible, that which arises in our mind, that is small, but also heavy, and also in the nature of light, and that we kind of maintain our focus on that as much as we can, like knowing that at the beginning that's going to be difficult to attain a sense of clarity with regard to that object, and to maintain the stability of that object. But that once we gain more familiarity with meditative concentration, we not only being able to lengthen the duration that we're able to focus on the object, but it will become clearer and clearer also.
What is it? That can just we see community and GTD community like as she but the Chibu Kona Semne. We see we say Trotter Kona and it because of the Jiwa Mayo. Kata, Tengetela and Budget Chishudi, that about Budget Chishudi Lelo. That Lelo Pab Tengas of Combine that the Jiwa to go back to you. Chigunik and the Tengas Budget Chetik. What is it? And this is Chedutaka Jachi. And it's because of the same good GT.
And so the qualities of both the light and the heaviness, the clear nature of light and the heaviness attributed to the object of our focus, like the Buddha, are said to kind of help to overcome the heaviness of a sense of agitation of mind, and the clear light aspect, or to overcome that sense of the fault of dullness or sinking. And so initially, of course, that which engages us in the process of meditative concentration, and hopefully keeps us engaging in session after session, is the dispelling of laziness, as we spoke about. But then what we have to deal with following the overcoming of the initial laziness are these qualities of mental sinking and mental excitement.
오다 딜레데네 다까지 지금 당분에 샘피다고 네트워크 용어인데 이나 더 거를 샘 네베 다까지 저 가서다 다까지 저 오르다 그다데 예방하고 뒤식게보다 샘 네베 다 고스겠다 나도 저거 균도 저거 레드 저거스다 대소 되게 도와다까지 샘 네베 고치 네와 저거 그러니까 두어 저거 시와 쳐봐서 그러니까 나봐 시와 쳐봐 세지도 쳐봐 아니 냐버 저거 샘 소스 다까지 와데네 저 샘데 고 됐다 거봐 실지 어떻게 도와
And so, of course, initially it's going to appear like a great kind of mountain to climb to try to develop such meditative stabilization, but it is really something that does reward with practice, and to be able to maintain one's focus on a chosen object, or overcoming the 5 faults by applying the 8 adjustments or antidotes. One then proceeds through the described 9 stages of meditation, coming from the initial stage of like having a just barely directed attention, through to close attention, through tamed attention, pacified attention, and then a fully pacified attention, up to single pointed attention, and then having attentional balance, and then that leading to mental quiescence or serenity or shamatha.
what is your thing to listen. That can take Tambuna Gurumush net to the Yumate, Pena Uchinang, Pena Umaj, Yasle, Utua Chicks, your Maj, Yasle, then they get Yamatua, Majda Yasle, Majda, the Tarangas, lesson net to watch. Then Yan, Corona to Tuna, Yan, the day you are choosing and subconscious net to. He put net to Jongas, success net to. The net, then you should send us. That day, Tambuna just go back to Cassess and Nasia was net watching in some such. Not the count to Nimakashi, Champachin, or Yakunet to Tuna, and then I asked me a patch and to the Cassess net, which were choose less than Mato Cassess net. And then a Jongas, then you should send us. The Chechen, Quachic Casoda, some Champachin.
So again, it says to really proceed initially in a very gradual way, not to kind of like take on the kind of full sort of professional posture of the meditator initially, but rather to concentrate on the breathing initially, even just a 5 full breaths, both the exhalation and the inhalation, and just see how well you can just focus on that, the quality of the breath itself. Maybe then to extend that slowly to the 9 round breathing, up to 15, 20, 25, and then just to initially kind of like as a preliminary to be able to settle the breathing, to be able to bring the mind to focus on the breathing in and out.
What the same case net to the you some net to go to Teneo, Goroda, Yarbe, pleasure. And that Jiwata Kobasing this way, and around Yamluna den. That nature Barankis, Yamne so the girls Shana Jiwayo, the girls Shana Kobayo, how Gobatona, and repair to Rangi Jiwato Kobayo, Rangi water bachin. 당분 당분도 못 좋아요 그 말때 이내야 다 딜레 돈 잡아다 시시하소는 에 시시 잘을 제원도 아니 간사스는 그 준비를 그 모트에다 세트 쪼대기로 와 아니 모트는 아니 랑이 냠뇽이 되나 다 되게 저나 되네 책이나 정화용도 되네 책 마도나 아니 그거 봐요 가서 정화용도 되네 책 토잖아 그거 봐요 그도스 가서나 그거 봐디 또 세미야 팡 토잖아 그거 용대 셈이야 팡 맞잖아 지마 용대지 보다 셈팡 토다 마디 최르무 지내다 라는 냠용을 빠내고 최르무 지내다 되제대 아니 그 간투도 대투했지
And so again, emphasizing at the outset how difficult it will be to sustain the focus on the object of one's meditation, and that here, how we can proceed is by really learning very assiduously from our own experience, and particularly in relation to the qualities of dullness and agitation. That when we can kind of recognize for ourselves, not just like what will lead to dullness, what will lead to agitation, but also the actual presence of dullness and the presence of agitation in our actual focus. We become more and more subtle at being able to recognize that from our own experience. So this comes gradually, very gradually, and that to be able to sense, that that agitation is imminent because of this sense of rising sense of the mind, this sort of like an excitement starting in the mind, and that one can sense dullness on the verge because there's a certain sinking sensation to my focus. So one is able to kind of make adjustments accordingly through one's own experience, become more and more subtle as we proceed, and that we will be able to sustain then for as long as we can a sense of an even-handed clarity and intensity to our focus.
친구의 중마 중대 아니 내줘 봐라니 그다 못 쳐봤잖아 아니 대 지와 요거도나 지와디 슉슉 다야 고바이 것도 고바디 슉슉 다 당분에 고바 자원이는 매바 지와 자원이 뭐 용해 줘요 와와 슉슉 아니 다 지와 참고 다데 레도 다 자성의 sen데 쪽으로다 그래서 지와 참고 되다 다 센터요 말이야. 미국한 네티브 소셜에 이내요. 그 센터 나리요 말이야. 다 미국에 네바 같이 지금 네바 잡아줘 왜 가르쳐 대박 고고도 와. 쌤 가르쳐 대박 고고도 와. 어떻게지?
And so then the yogi has said that is kind of charged with recognizing the onset and the presence of both mental dullness and mental agitation, and seeks to reduce the impact of both more and more and more, and said that then after some time one reaches the point of being able to avoid the coarser levels of mental sinking and mental excitement, but that when it comes to subtle mental sinking or mental dullness, for example, that there is no apparent sort of distraction in our focus, but one should be able to recognize a certain compromised intensity with regard to the object, and that this is the presence of subtle dullness. And so, in regard to Tantra and the relationship of developing meditative concentration or shamatha in relation to Tantra, so there's no overt teaching related to how one develops serenity, meditative serenity, or meditative concentration in the context of Tantra. But of course, it's nonetheless absolutely essential as well. But it's done through the tantric mode of taking an empowerment and then engaging the practice through one's generation as the deity of that empowerment. And from that point of view, one focuses on the mandala of the particular empowerment and engages in the development of the necessary focus, sustainment of that focus, known as shamatha or meditative concentration. And of course then too, as well as that particular mode within Tantra, but of course Tantra of course is based on the three principal paths as kind of common to the perfection vehicle as well, and they specify because a kind of a Tumo Lamjam the Ding is in the so we have like both then the including of course the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, meditative concentration, and the correct view of emptiness as well.
And Taganishing Sem Hadroy, Lubacha Carosona, Sem Troy the Mancha the Carto, Diocha to Yorba. Diocha Kia the Caricosona, Tameg Nashin Kibiorba. That's Sanga Namlet Puma Chicken Chicken, Miabado, because a Tameg Nashin Ka Yorba. Tameg Nashin Ka on to, and Chatang Lokesati, Yomarba. Namlip Shama Chigina. Diocha, Shatan, the congregated, Tameg Nasherba.
And so, as well as having the firm basis in an appreciation of meditative stabilization for Tantra, Tantra also has that certain advantage in a way of really putting a stop to what is known as ordinary appearance, because ordinary appearance is that which focuses on so much on attachment, and attachment is the biggest distraction to meditative concentration. And so from that point of view, the proper tantrika or tantric practitioner is really determined to not view reality in its ordinary sense no longer, and therefore is not prey to those distractions based on attachment, but putting a stop to ordinary appearance also puts a stop to a lot of the distractions to meditative concentration.
점점 어저 견자도가 어저 점점 상하고 온슈 상하고 냠면 지기에 라 아니 제 라마 상계에서 딱고 먹어야 되는 자승부터 셰되고 열봐 라마 상계 딱고 맞아 심제 탐제 상계 딱고도 상하고 냠면 지기지나 심제 탐제 랑이 이당고 다 이당고 용나 딱고 열어 라마도 셰 먹어로 점점 어저 상하고 온슈 취지다 마시 버체 라마 상계에서 다에 갈래도 시거와 갈래도 시거 라마 상계에서 맞아 심제 탐제 상계 딱고 열어 그래서 탐에게 나시 까고 와 네디안 딱고 그래서 가서다 시행한 딱고 열어 심제 탐제 아니 상계게 나발 딱고 열어 그래서 탐에 나시 까고 열어 라 상계 딱고 열어 아니 라마 상계에서 딱고 하다 셰모르와 그렇다 그래서 점점 어디서 상하 원슈 대과치 보려 상하 圈 냠내 지고 요 라마 산제라 다에 강에 도스 망고 셰고 요 봐라 그렇다 문에 저는 라마 산제 따고 심제 탐체 산제 따고도 그렇다 냠내 뼈만 지기나 가서 무슨 냠내 지다는 맛이 몇 개인지는 아니 차대요 그렇다 컴퓨터 그래
Again, I was pointing to like the prevalence of a great deal of confusion with regard to the taking on of tantric empowerment and the engaging in tantric practice. You know that you often hear the complaint people make say, "I've taken the empowerment, I'm engaged in the tantric practice, I'm doing this and that and the other thing, tantric wise, but I still have a lot of problems seeing the guru as the Buddha." And in fact, you know that the whole premise behind the taking of an empowerment and the generating and doing tantric practice is that you see all sentient beings as enlightened beings. You know, you generate yourself as the Buddha, as a guru, as the deity, and you see all other sentient beings as enlightened beings. This is kind of like the first base of tantric practice. You put aside all ordinary appearance. This is what it means, and you see everything in its enlightened aspect. In other words, you're living not in a normal house, but in the celestial palace of an enlightened being. You're making the objects of use are enlightened objects. Your speech is mantra, and so all other sentient beings are to be viewed as already enlightened beings. So, if somebody is complaining about not being able to see their guru as a Buddha, in that case, they've kind of missed the point of Tantra.
Yeah, because Lama what Simje Tamja Sanjay number Tagu, Simje Tamja Sanjay Tamari, in a number of 10 and Tamanashika.
So that, you know, we say, of course, all sentient beings, not necessarily Buddhas, but we're training to see them from the tantric perspective as already enlightened beings, because this also facilitates putting a stop to ordinary appearance. That's why the perfection vehicle is sometimes referred to as the causal vehicle, and the tantric vehicle is referred to as the resultant vehicle, because the emphasis in tantra is on taking the result onto the path.
Buddha Pomola Sobat and Caso de Kingo High number control, and Kotiga Caso Takanja. Shene is Sudukom over Chene. Shene is Sudukom over Chene, Takanja, Takarange, Tashene Kochu to Yorwa, Kochu to Yor. Today in Baza, Casanas, Sanga in Yamlet, Takaja, Pajin take one a Gulbuko to today in Baza, Ngara Gela Kitchen Tama Sunko and Nengamito in a Simjang Tungan now, Sugumi to Nudu Sanke Gutus, Laundu, and that Sanga Yamachet Yuguyorwa, that into any Shenechi, and Shene Lam com Chibaina, to the Shuguru Quarter Yorwa. 다 하이네 조금 막 다가는 것이 내 고쳐주고요. 봐.
And so therefore the tantric perspective has already transformed one's place into the celestial palace of the meditational deity. There's one's male and female friends are transformed. They're seen as the male and female deities of the mandala that we are meditating on, and we do not develop a kind of a meditative serenity or quiescence separately. That it's done in the context of our contemplation of the mandala meditative practice. And so this is then also, it's sort of like really informed by the special motivation for entering into tantric practice, whereby we have an understanding of how long things take in the perfection vehicle of the three countless eons and so on to attain the state of enlightenment, and the long time it takes to develop meditative serenity and so on in the perfection vehicle context, and that's we're fine with that. But it's this kind of, it's the quality of compassion that is unable to bear the fact that sentient beings have to wait for three countless eons for me to attain the enlightenment that can be a benefit to them. That's unbearable. So I seek to find the best, most proficient and efficient and quickest way possible to attain the state of enlightenment, to be of benefit to sentient beings as quickly as possible. So in this context, there is no long time taken to develop meditative serenity, that it's done in the context of one's own tantric practice.
다지 가서도 심지어 탐정도 사이에 고마투에 나게 냠내지야 그가 디체도 삼사잖아. 난 네가 그가 랑 동바자는 안 간투도 하이데 조금 아니 심지어 셔바도 동바디인가네 하이 넘버코 안 랑이 네디게데 동바디인가네 아니 셰강 삼로당 간투도 그 삼로당이 와 간투도 그 삼로당전 다가자 내를 롱조도 잡아 하이 넘버 다투버지는 강투도 다투버지는 바사 켜바지 시작이 와. 아니 지금 소소냐 집바다와 있네 집바다와한테 사주친구 누바친구 용 그래. 소바공반에 누바친구 용 그래. 로다 추정송반에 추정송반에 누바친구 용 그래. 로아 용으로 왔다 상하고 죽은 냠래 죽으러 와. 뒤에서 뉴도 상기와 탑을 조티기로 와. 난 뒤에서 강투도 그 다가저저 가서데 켈 강투도 라메군들이 쉬바데 톨라 마당하잖아. 강투도 제부 뿌이다 보지 멘트베죠. 배준제한테 개침버려.
And so that's, of course, that many of you will not have entered into tantric practice, but I know that some older students here possibly have taken on the empowerment and so on. And so it's, to have committed to engaging in the particular sadhanas of practice and the six guru yoga and so on, that it's so important that you kind of like really make the most of this opportunity, because in every moment of that tantric reality you're laying down extraordinarily special imprints on the mind that are very, very important. And so that to rise from emptiness as the deity oneself, to transform one's place through emptiness into the celestial palace of the deity, and that through transforming all one's acquaintances too into the participants, the deities of the mandala, through emptiness, and do the best we can to kind of both generate this reality and sustain this reality in order to lay down these special imprints. And so any act of, say, generosity or patience or love, compassion, and that we engage in through this vision, this tantric reality, lays down very extraordinary imprints, and not to waste the efforts of the guru and our own time having taken on empowerment, but to be able to proceed from the tantric reality point of view afterwards.
아니 대과 파제 대과 냠내 지금 rangi 쭉 근데 지금 위에 아니 그래서 대과 준비 쭉 냠내를 줘도 같이 찍고 열어 배나 rangi 가서도 배나 지나 배나 가서도 소다게 출전다고 있나 다 소다 지다 녀뒤 대배 룩소르지 네 이내 냠내 집어 보티 대과 준비 냠내 지금 소다게 냠내데 대과 준비 줄을 줘 되기로 와 세과 준비 줄을 줘 되기로 와 다 상하게 냠내 지금 아니 소다가 동발라 소바 자주선배 동발라 소바 다 되게 돼 아니 상하게 냠내 줘 되기로 와 가사 코라를 알리기도 와 알리기도 와다 되게 인바인자 아니 라게 지금 가서데 매바 요반이시 뉴도 산제가 심지어 탐제고 뉴도 산제 매바 요반이시 상하게 쳐 냠내 제와내시 라게 냠내 근데 치고는 우당의 양제는 상하게 줄을 줘 두지 뉴도 산지에 줄을 줘 두지 어디다 개침 물어 랑게 제대 어디다 년도고 쳐야지 가서도 기부 중국이 쳐야지 기부 등기 쳐야지 가서 파진 대배 쳐야지 상하 주요 말을 상하 쳐 냠내 지금 최 그런게 냠내 제재가가 상하 쳐 되기로 지신게 지제바이나
So to ensure too that once we have taken on tantric empowerment, that the dharma that we engage in thereafter is to be a tantric dharma, as in like when we are doing based in the perfection vehicle teachings, that what dharma we engage in is kind of based on, or is perfection vehicle dharma, so to speak, there. And so it's like we have to but we have to understand, for example, in terms of vows, say if we have like individual liberation vehicle vows, but we are proceeding from the bodhicitta ideal of the perfection vehicle, then our dharma becomes bodhisattva dharma. And likewise, even though we are have individual liberation vehicle vows, but we have empowerment, we're proceeding from the tantric perspective, then all those vows take on the hue of the tantric vows, a tantric perspective. And it's important for us to understand that it depends on the person, that those who have taken on the goal of attaining enlightenment as quickly as possible, need to understand that every act can be the tantric dharma for them. Even the point of our breathing in and out should be imbued with that intensive motivation, that tantric motivation. It's very, very important. That so, regardless of whether the dharma itself is seen as related to the Shravaka or the solitary realizer vehicles, or the perfection vehicle, and that from our point of view, every act, every moment is lived from the point of view of a tantric reality.
So what did it 가서도 강투도게 냠내디 안 제도바치에지 다든데 제도바이나 아니 마오발라이네 다 지나 미 삐다고래원에 똑바뉴도 게레 핑그레 아니 지 대다 말해봐 이네야 모두네 아니 상하게 때마다지 무튼 상냥가 상나게 때마다 제야 대바치 최대 제 무튼 최남의 제게 대상고 렌토에 줄로 줘대로 와 근데 겹상도 와 저서도 다가 이제 되면 맞아 온슈 직제 아니 제거에 다다 맞지 아니 녀모도 숨데 빼다 보지 냐제 아니 다 디바 차사에면 도 개면 와 되겠자 내가 제버도 삽삽 맞잖아 삽삽 맞잖아 빼 내가 제버
So that's from the point of view of Tantra, quite apart from the fact that if we faithfully sustain our vows and practice, that realization will come more quickly. But also in the future we will have more possibility of meeting with the Tantra again, meeting with Tantric practice again, meeting with proper Tantric teachers again, and being able to gain the proper basis on which to practice Tantra again, and so have all these necessary advantages to be able to engage in Tantric practice again. Of course, the reverse, the converse is also very, very true, that if we do not sustain our vows, if we fail in our practice and our commitments, then great negativities also.
아니 지금 심지어 막아는 제바이나 어다 빼면서 되고 좀 남주 된대기 캐 말린 게 지금 되고 사와다 될 말이야. 그래서 가서 소속에 룡아 예수도 심정도 너무 차버려. 다 된대 지금 아니 심정 고고다. 아니 때 라마다 긴걸 하고 고고다 사. 다 되고 무슨 되고 사티가 다 섭섭제 쉬울게 좀 버려. 섭섭제 좀.
And so because that in the taking on of Tantra, the Tantric reality and Tantric vows, we have done so. And so we have, and in taking, of course, the Bodhisattva vow, that we have taken on a major commitment in the presence of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and made certain promises. And so if we renege on those vows, or if we renege on the Bodhisattva promise, then we are deceiving the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and indeed all sentient beings, through our acts of body, speech and mind. And of course, needless to say, that is constituting a very negative, very heavy negativity.
Very careful, yeah.
We have to be very, very careful. And so that, of course, those who don't have that commitment don't sustain such a heavy negativity. And so then, looking at the outlines again, the fourth of these was how to engage in the practice of meditative stabilization. And it said that indeed any kind of meditative stabilization that we practice should be done in the context of the six supremacies and in connection with the six perfections. And so that with each of the perfections there can be an aspect of meditative concentration. And that once we abide in meditative concentration ourselves, our attempts to lead anybody else to abide in meditative concentration constitutes, for example, the generosity of meditative stabilization. And the rest is as has been previously explained. And then the fifth is the summary, kind of like the summary of what has gone before. So in terms of meditative stabilization, we initially, of course, recall and meditate on the mind of enlightenment itself, bodhicitta, as the basis of our actions, our activities. And then it's with that motivation, really aspiring to and train in like the higher levels of meditative stabilization, to increase our meditative stabilization and inspire others and lead them to uncontaminated meditative stabilization. And so again, in discussing the length of time necessary to attain such meditative stabilization, it's in the recognition that it is quite difficult to be able to have that much time available. But we can begin, as was previously pointed out, by simply observing the breath and measuring or focusing on, say, 5 inhalations and exhalations, and then 9, then 15, then 20, and then 25, and gradually increasing it. And then if we do get some time, then to go in a more concentrated way to develop meditative stabilization. So that briefly actually finishes this section on meditative concentration.
지와도 거면은 뭐 또 맞게 받친 대투에 야 두제바네요 컨트롤이 교지고 요자 왔다가 저 내가 그 처를 무시고 저 소속에 다 냠내 제제는 거 투에지를 거셔도
And so, like with regard to in any individual developing one's meditative stabilization to the point of that meditative serenity or quiescence is really dependent on each individual practitioner and how they are able to make use of their own meditative experience to overcome the difficulties and to apply the necessary adjustments or antidotes when necessary. So what one is beginning with initially, and this is part of the process too of using in the breath to kind of bring forth these qualities of clarity with regard to the object and a certain intensity of focus, and that both are to kind of preempt the main difficulties of mental dullness and mental agitation or excitement. So one must be kind of aware, I suppose, in the back of one's mind of the many different levels of both mental excitement, but particularly mental dullness as well. And that here, that sort of element of clarity is helpful to kind of really offset those particular disadvantages or faults. But one is really reliant on at all times the twin qualities of my mental alertness and mental mindfulness, and that certain mindfulness that not only keeps the attention focused on the object, but is able to also have an element of assessment of that as to how whether or not it is on the object or not. And then the mental alertness is like the spy, which is checking for distraction, checking for anything untoward with regard to that attention. Is it sustaining its clarity and intensity on the object? And then with both of those in play, one is able to recognize when fault has occurred, and that's only one aspect of it, but then one is also able to apply as quickly as possible the antidote that will eradicate whatever element of mental agitation or mental dullness has arisen. And so there's a lot to work with, and it is down to the individual practitioner and indeed the degree to which they can both glean experience and use their own experience to adjust and refine their own meditative concentration. So this is kind of really a paramount aspect of it, to recognize distraction and to be able then to apply the antidotes when necessary, and therefore but not also to avoid over applying the antidotes when not necessary, so that one is able to sustain a mind that is kind of like in equilibrium, but still with clarity and intensity on its object.
먼저 계급 순ገብ적인다 찍버려 계급 순ገብ지에도 수준 20값이 도나지고 요봐 계급 그러나 자르서부터 되는 역자 요구다 순ገብ지로 수준 20값이 자마 된 수준 20값이니까 자지제 되고요. 딱 진당다 저 랑게 너무 다 베라스 너무도 믹스가 다다데 센트로에리다 다 믹스가 다다데 지와도 거바지게 다 자치주의에서 수준 20값이 자마 된 거를 가데 자지제 거서 찾는다. 아 뒤도 없어요. 다 계급 순ገብ지를 그렇지 보고도 다 뒤는 좀 알아서 그 가서도 땡에지 순ገብ지에라. 그렇지. 다 되지.
So again, I was using the analogy of the nation protecting itself from the likes of terrorism, where you have these systems in place 24/7 with checking for any danger to society. And so from that point of view, take that sort of image and place it in the mind when developing meditative concentration, where you have your mindfulness and alertness out there checking for any mental dullness or agitation that might arise for your meditative concentration.
다다 생기디 자라 전제데 다다 먹음도 강에는 검사도 하는 거 장수고 거 조선 요만 좀 되고 줘 봐. 얘가 ಬೇಕು 되게 로바리 거디네 강에 됐어 봐. 다 이나 다다 되고 다다 모두 고바 매별 강에 되면 고바 주만 한 거든 셈세데 다 자체 못 싫어해. 아니 생기 대세미 뭐 망고 싶지 어때? 먼저 대세 그거 배주 땅 두고 요 말아 봐. 생기 대세 되게 배주 땅 두고 거 제레 소소도 소소 내가 내기도 봐. 소소소 먼저 소소소 내가 내게도 먼저 배주 땅 마도 같이 쌤 가봐도 되자도 그거 쌤 되자는 거지. 어다도 어떻게 이제 파도 되게 봐. 세상은 세상 거 파도잖아. 다들 쌤그 대선대가 이야와 체네. 아니 소소소 내가 듣고 있도 봐이나. 아니 쌤 뒤에 이렇게 와 싶지 않지.
So so like Jan is making the distinction then between the kind of like the protection against the terrorism analogy or image and the our development of meditative concentration. So for example, like here, if we at the situation now, if we're not meditating, we don't meditate, we are not aware of the all the peculiarities and the divisions, systems, compartments, and elements of what goes on in the vastness of our mind. But when we do that meditation, they all come into kind of very clear and sharp relief for us, and so we can start to come from being overwhelmed, of course, to initially gaining and recognition of that when the mind when attachment arises in the mind, we can kind of have the sense of there's a whole sort of compartment of the mind associated with expert in following leads of attachment, and off it goes, and there you can see how that works, and then agitation or aggression, and there's another kind of a compartment in the mind, and it's really through gaining an understanding of all this as it occurs in the course of developing meditation, and that one starts the process of controlling the mind. So knowledge is power in this regard of our inner workings. And once we gain an understanding of them, a recognition of them, we can both do what's necessary when they are arising, and we can also preempt them disturbing our meditative concentration. And so that it's like there are different aspects of mind that each have their own area of expertise, but we do not have expertise over the mind to be able to make proper use of them. And so this is what we're gaining. And so we want that not having enough of the happiness we want and having too much of the suffering that we do not want is a result of not having this control, not having this awareness, this overview, not being on top of our own mind and all the different aspects and compartments of the mind, and that this lack of control of it also, of course, naturally opens up opportunities for the mental afflictions to have their say in our mind. And so with that,
쌤 녀몬 철도도 녀몬 철도 갑자기 저거 뭐 저거는 쌤 코란에 갑자기 용도했지. 딜레다는 엔디니가 좀 당도했지.
And that and so that in the course of our inner training, we become aware of the arising of mental afflictions in the mind, how they are prompted, and their manifestation in the mind, how they play out, and this kind of recognition also informs us how to put a stop to those mental afflictions, how to apply antidotes to them. And it's all an inside job. It's not something that is learned from some external mechanism, but we ourselves have to do that work of both recognizing when the mind is compromised by affliction and what to do in that circumstance, how to apply antidotes to overcome that. Okay, so we leave it there at the having finished briefly and the section on meditative stabilization, and so we next begin the perfection of wisdom. So as it's said in the Bodhisattva's way of life, that all of the previous 5 branches of the 6 perfections are for the purpose of informing the 6th wisdom. So it's really emphasizing the importance of the 6th perfection. So the development or meditative stabilization, this 5th of the 6 perfections that we have just discussed, is often compared to a fit, a strong body, whereas the 6th wisdom is often referred to as compared to a sharp axe, and so one needs both in order to cut the wood of mental afflictions at the very root. And so without that strong body, one can't wield the axe very accurately. One is kind of striking without any particular purpose, without any particular accuracy. And so that meditative stabilization is the strong, fit body that is able to wield in the sharp wisdom, the blade of wisdom, to cut through the particular meditative afflictions. And so that's of course for that meditative concentration to come about, effort, the 4th perfection, the perfection of enthusiastic perseverance, is required, and that in turn arises too from the 3rd, the perfection of patience, and then patience is something that builds from the first two of the perfection of generosity and perfection of ethical conduct. And indeed, in many ways, ethical conduct acts as a basis, really, doesn't it, for the initial stages of really taming the mind. And of course, for all of that to have any purpose, it is they're all enacted and done with the bodhicitta motivation. And that to develop that mind of enlightenment, compassion is required. It's impossible without compassion. And for a compassion that requires an equanimous mindset. Because with a mind that is prone to attachment on the one side and aversion on the other, that is a mind which is not equanimous, then compassion is, you can't speak of compassion, and of course without compassion you can't generate the mind of enlightenment. And so then, so you can see, without the mind of enlightenment, then it's pointless enacting just really pretending to enact the six perfections, and so therefore you will not be able to create the causes that will lead to the result of enlightenment. And so you can see how everything is very intricately connected and necessary. And so then first to have that sense of knowing the whole overall presentation, and then we ask the question, okay, well, where do I stand on this? Where do I fit? What should I be doing first? And so then one knows where to start and how to build on one's practice through the stages. And so, because without proper foundation, how can you build on that at all? So without good foundation, then a good shower of rain will just wash everything away. So it's like a little bit of anger just wipes everything out, a little bit of attachment wipes everything out, like the same way. And so like with a good foundation, then a little anger, a little attachment won't cause so much damage. And so that it's a lot of fault occurs from simply ignorance, from not knowing, and that if one just knows a little, it's often kind of like can be very troublesome, very difficult that we proceed without the full information. Take language, if you don't understand the language very well, then you're likely to put your foot in it quite a lot. And so
for
the same.
example, me. My English.
So there's dangers. And so the same goes for practice, that it's important to get the overall view, the overview, and to really understand it very well, to see, okay, so where must I begin? How should I begin? So
good person. 따다 미코나 약고 명바체나 아니 출로 캔티 내가 소도스 영다 소도 대마를 거 약고 신고 영마로 와 영다 이거도 봐 이게 나도 출로 강에나 영다 지금 한거 열어 봤다 강에나 열어 가서 그다 뭐 미코나 딱 따지 때 이거 나 미래 내게 가대 딱다시 아니 내가 저 가리켜는 최대 갈아간다 차상와 학교에 터는 아니 내 남네 그네 고수 그래 아니 되네 전에 알고 남네 전에 좀하나 출로 컨디션에 밀어 내고 말아 가도 편 터도 라나는 팽게 말이야 다 맞도 막보지 랑 최킬라 랑에 팽게 말이 셴에 팽게 말아 그래서 그 차상와 제 맛이 아니 시바데 배줄로 받지 아니 랑레 마베 아니 셴레 마베 아니 마베 갈레 랑레 셴레 네 니가 되도
So that's what we hear around the world now, saying people who discuss such matters kind of point out that spiritual practice, spiritual traditions are not important. That a person is good is important. That's what's important. If the person is a good person, then if they engage in any spiritual tradition after that, that will benefit. That will be good. And but initially it has to start out with a kind of a good person is important first. And so it goes to the other way as well. Like, say, for a person who who engages in a spiritual tradition, or who proposes to engage in a spiritual tradition, must have the overview of what is proposed in that spiritual tradition, and that they can really gain a thorough understanding of that, see where they fit into it, and how they can start with it. And so it's kind of like, in that way, there's every chance that what you do, what you engage in, what you practice will be beneficial, not just to yourself but to others as well. But without proceeding like that, just on the basis of kind of blindly entering into practice in spiritual traditions without having a thorough knowledge of them, it's doubtful whether what you do will be beneficial to either yourself or to others, and a great danger that it may be harmful to both yourself and to others. So leave it there. From my two collections, vastest space that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds lose the mind blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all lives and history. May I find the best of complete greater paths of the teachings, and may I embrace all the Buddhas for my practice. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings, with the points of the path as I have discerned, and may I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread and declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted boundless peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time, by even this greater path to enlightenment completed, due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their children. May all human and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path faced by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may they always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. You are our beloved Betrayer, great treasure of compassion, not named to your existence, and Rajyoshri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception. Sankapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows, lost and uttered by Rajyoshri, not named requests.